Hey, what's going on, guys? So, I just got done watching the three big names in 90s cartoons: Batman the Animated Series, X-Men, and Gargoyles. Now, these three shows have been a lot of fun for me to watch. I kid you not. It is so much fun seeing the adventures of these characters. For Batman the Animated Series, there was a lot that went on for that show in particular. The fact that they made one of the darkest shows ever was so amazing. It's honestly hard to explain. The biggest thing that I do know for about it for sure, well, one of the biggest things about it was that a lot of the process of it went through like storyboarding it through black paper kind of thing to give it that dark and edgy tone. And I really, really enjoyed that. It was so much fun. And not to mention, the writing is so good. There are several episodes where I am just blown away by all the writing, the lines, the dialogue, everything. And I really do love the show. It is, in my opinion, it is the best representation of Batman ever because it gives us all the dark and brooding moments. It gives so because I think that slurred a little bit. It gives us all the dark and brooding moments. It gives us the compassion that Batman always has, and it gives us the great lines of dialogue that you'd expect from Batman. Seriously, there is nothing more amazing than seeing Batman say the line, "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman," which I'm going to try to do now to horrific effect.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
And that was my best Kevin Conroy impression. I'm sure it was terrible, but you guys let me know about that in the comments. And seriously, episodes like Heart of Ice, Pretty Poison, On Leather Wings, the pilot episode On Leather Wings, that has some of the scariest imagery, in my opinion, for the entire show. I am not kidding. I grew up with this show via the first five episodes on VHS, if anybody remembers that. And On Leather Wings was one of those episodes. It was the first five production order. And I don't recall exactly, but Man Bat's transformation is so intense. Just the fact that it just looks like it. The biggest thing about it is it looks like it is so painful for Kurt Langstrom to go through that transformation. And that's the main reason why I love that. It is so scary. Imagine showing it to your 5-year-old kids, which I might do at some point. But the bigger thing is, it is so intense, and yet it matches everything in the show. The show itself is very intense. There are a lot of different episodes that deal with bigger and personal uh, objectives. For instance, The Forgotten. It is, I believe it's called The Forgotten. It is about Bruce Wayne reliving through a lot of his emotional trauma and coming to terms with who he is after he got amnesia. Um, which actually happens a couple times in Batman stories. But it is so cool because it spends a lot of time with Bruce Wayne forgetting who he is and gives us a great dream sequence where he has to try to fight through a lot of his own personal demons and even some of his literal Batman demons. Like the Penguin, Two Face, the Joker. It is so dark. It is twisted. It is everything Batman. And even though I believe it was season four, went a little bit downhill from like the show's quality and everything, mostly because they moved from Fox Kids to Kids WB, where they had to have more of a what was it called? more focus on the kids aspect of it, the stories were still very epic. It really still felt like Batman. Maybe not to the same degree. I mean, a lot of the character designs were very different, but in terms of with what it is, the show was still very fun. And I kid you not, seeing Nightwing, seeing the updated versions for Batgirl for and Nightwing, they were actually pretty cool to see. I didn't really grow up with the Batman comics, but I knew who these characters were. And seeing Nightwing on screen and seeing a more, I'll say, darker colored version of Batgirl is very epic. And Tim Drake Robin, yeah, we all can agree he's Tim Drake in name, but Jason Todd in backstory. But his story is so amazing for it. I do not know of anything else that would be like very uh like personal for him. I mean, he has a father who left him and has connections with Two-Face kind of thing. And I do love his relationship with Nightwing, his protege, or no, not protege, his predecessor. Because the two have very different ways of going about their lives. Tim Drake is still young. He's learning the ropes about being a superhero. Even when he does grow up, he's still very, very unsure of with what to do. And Nightwing is always there to help him out whenever he can. But even still, he doesn't like being in Gotham very much because of his relationship with Batman, which we learn about in Old Wounds, which is such a good episode. I love that episode. It is so interesting. It is so engaging. It gives us the proper way that Dick Grayson left the Bat family. It gives us good reason for that. Even though Bruce is very much a jerk for not including Dick into all the information kind of thing. But it is such an interesting way to go about all of this. Because, in my personal opinion, the center of that story had to be Barbara Gordon. Because it was her who was getting a lot of the emotional baggage in that storyline. Because I mean, think about it this way. Who has a better story about it? The guy who is literally doing the same thing we've seen for the last, I want to say, like 65 episodes, or the girl who literally has her date running out on her like every single night? Who has the more interesting story in that? Both are essential for this, but Barbara has a bit more of a um, more defined story in that episode, and that's why I like it so much. But yeah, Batman the Animated Series was just so epic. It really feels like Batman to me. And Kevin Conroy, rest in peace, man. There was never any Batman quite like you. You are the best Batman ever. Then moving on to X-Men, we had such amazing episodes and amazing characters going on through that show as well. I I'll be honest, X-Men never really grabbed me from the comics kind of thing. I only knew them from like the movies, maybe some of the shows kind of thing. But this X-Men was really fun. It showed the deep turmoil that goes through all of these characters. I'm not kidding when I say I felt like I was part of the X-Men just by watching the show. And there are a lot of people who really sympathize with them. There is just so much going on for these characters that I literally could spend hours talking about it just by the fact, just from the 5 seasons of X-Men that we had, or that I guess people growing up had from the 90s. And look, I will talk about X-Men 97 at another date, but for now, I'm just talking about the original X-Men series because this is what X-Men was. There is so much that goes on with this story, and I do not even know if I can talk about just about everything for it. But some of the biggest things is that Morph has one of the most fun and interesting stories that goes on throughout the show. And I gotta say, I was right there with him for the majority of it. I mean, he literally goes through near death experience, being brainwashed into trying to kill his friends, becoming a bit of a lone wolf, trying to just work through it himself, to coming back to the X Mansion and becoming part of the X Men again, to leaving them again because he can't deal with his own trauma properly, to finally in the finale coming to being on his own for who knows how long, to finally coming back in the finale to help the X Men with one final thing. It was so epic to see his story become like this. And even though he was only in like maybe, I want to say he was only in like 15 episodes or something, I felt his story throughout the entire thing. It was so engaging. I'm not kidding. Uh the first four seasons of X-Men were the best thing ever. There was just so much that was going on for all the characters. And while some episodes weren't exactly like top tier, as some would say, I still really enjoyed a lot of the show because even in some of the more corny episodes, there was still a lot that was going on for it. And you can't say that it's not interesting in any way. Heck, even the one of my least favorite episodes was a Christmas episode. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was called A Morlock Christmas. And it is one of the more cheesy and boring episodes that I can think of from the show. Yet, I was still engaged enough to want to know what was going to happen to all the characters. It is very intriguing. And honestly, the biggest thing about X Men that could have led to a downfall in it, and it kind of led to a bit of a downfall for Spider-Man the animated series from the same time frame, and it's a reason why I'm not talking about it here. But um so yeah, Spider-Man the animated series, I'm not talking about that here because that feels a little bit different. It's not as dark, it's not as epic. It honestly has a completely different feel to X-Men, Batman, and Gargoyles. And that's why I'm not talking about it here. But for X-Men, the biggest thing about it was that it crammed so much story into each episode. I'm not kidding. They have like 22 minutes to go through a single episode. And even the producers in an interview said that they didn't like how the animation really looked for a lot of the characters. Because walking in the show, doing the fight scenes in the show, and I can agree with this, the walking and fight scenes look a little awkward in the show, especially the fight scenes. But to be fair, you could say, oh, they're mutants, they have powers. It makes the fighting a little awkward, kind of thing. But because of that, they added every single episode, again, 22 minutes long for each episode. It feels like there's 10 stories going on in each episode. And even some of the bigger episodes and like sagas kind of thing, like the Dark Phoenix saga, Days of Future Past, One Man's Worth. I mean, here's the thing: the multi-story arcs are at least 44 minutes. Two episodes, 44 minutes. Yet it feels like that every single second there is dialogue that is being pushed out, kind of thing. Yet it all feels natural as well. One of the big reasons is I don't recall which episode it was, but there is one episode, I want to say it might be One Man's Worth, where there is just like nonstop dialogue going on for like 5 minutes straight between Wolverine, Storm, Bishop, and what was her name? Bishop's sister. I don't remember her name. Somebody in the comments, please let me know that one. And there's like 5 straight minutes of them going through dialogue, through coming to the past and fighting a sentinel, Nimrod, and then there's them also talking to Xavier and trying to explain everything to him, kind of thing. And that goes on for like 5 minutes. There's like no stopping, kind of thing. Then it cuts to them in a diner, and we're finally allowed to breathe a little bit. It gives us a few seconds where there's no talking, and we're just coming into a scene, kind of thing. And I do love that about this show. Even though there's like many, many minutes of them talking about stuff, we're still able to, they give it in a way that's easy to process, and also, the world around also helps with understanding what they're saying. There are several episodes where they give like monologues of information, and then we're just sitting here for maybe 3 to 5 seconds on the scene as it transitions out, and that helps to really uh, get an idea of what's going on, what the stakes are, what the characters are really going through. We're able to sit there and just process it, even for a moment. It's so fun and so engaging. Spider-Man the animated series did something similar, but there it felt like every single second they were talking. There wasn't really much in the way of let's just let a scene breathe. So yeah, and season 5 of X-Men, admittedly, that one went down in quality, but a lot of the stuff is attributed to money. And uh, the studio just didn't want to keep spending all that money on extra animation work. So while the characters did look more cartoony, they still had the same quality to them, the same voices, the same mannerisms, the same kind of work that went into them. And I really do love that about the show. There is so much that goes on in everything in this show. I I kid you not. I love this show and was so excited when I heard that X-Men 97 was coming to Disney Plus and being re like getting that sequel, and the show getting the sequel treatment with X-Men 97. And I am still excited that season 2 of X-Men 97 is coming at some point, I think this year. And this show itself is one of, if not the best, of Marvel animation that I have seen in quite a long while. And last on our list is going to be Gargoyles. Now, this show, I will say, immediately off the bat, it has one of the most interesting premises of all time. And it's hard for me to convey it without having to rely on the intro, so I'll just read it verbatim. 1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles. Stone by day, warriors by night. They were betrayed by the humans they had sworn to protect, frozen in stone by a magic spell for 1,000 years. Now in Manhattan, the spell is broken, and they live again! Yeah, the intro to Gargoyles is one of the best things I've ever seen. I love the music for it. But all 3 of these shows, Batman, X-Men, and Gargoyles, they can vie for the best 90s intros, in my opinion. Um, well, at least the best 90s intros that featured a darker tone cartoon. I'm sure there are other 90s shows that have much better intros, kind of thing. But Gargoyles was so unique because it focused on the characters going through prejudice and being outcasts and trying to do what they can to at least to help people. no matter what, they always did what they could to help others, even if it meant their own destruction. And that's something that I really love about it. It was very much a show about acceptance, and it took similar beats to both Batman and X-Men. From Batman, it took the fact that a lot of the action comes at night, mostly because during the day, the gargoyles are stone statues. And that is something that was very interesting to for the show because there is a lot that goes on in the show. And with a lot of these things going on, I gotta say, having them be stone during the day is very interesting, and it gives a little bit more of a mythology to gargoyle statues. And I'm pretty sure if I saw this as a kid and then went to I don't even know where gargoyle statues would be. I'd say maybe the Notre Dame. I wouldn't know if it was just statues or if they were actually real at night. And that's something that I really love about it. It is so interesting to see the show play out that way. And I can't go on with Gargoyles without saying that I am stunned by the fact that like half of the show's actors are Star Trek: The Next Generation actors. Jonathan Frakes, Colonel, Colonel, Captain Riker, it is David Xanatos. Michael Dorn, who is Worf, is both Cold Steel and what was the other guy's name? Taurus. And I actually don't remember any other Next Generation cast members who appeared in the show. But there were a lot of different cast members in there. And I can't believe it took me this long to realize it. But Tom Wilson, the guy who played Biff Tannen in Back to the Future, is freaking Matt Bluestone in this show. I just learned about this very recently, and I kid you not, my mind was blown, and I was like, "Oh, now I hear it." It is just so amazing with this show, and I love each of the gargoyles that are here. Goliath was so interesting, and we do follow his story mostly, but it is so much fun. I mean, he is the one, mostly the fish out of water. He is very traditional and very protective of the way things should be for gargoyles. And I love that about him. It shows the stubbornness of the old generation versus the adaptivity of the new generation. And the new generation being Broadway, Lexington, and Brooklyn. All of whom are I love those. I love the fact that they chose those names. But yeah, Broadway, Patrick the Star. It's just like after you know that, you can't unhear it. But yeah, Broadway is honestly my personal favorite just because Bill Fagerbakke is just so much fun. And he seems like such a nice guy, and it is just so fun to hear his voice. And Lexington, and I just love the fact that he just loves food. Lexington is a bit of like the brainy tech whiz kind of thing, and Brooklyn is the unsure but ready to go into action, like teenager. Um, but yeah, I love the fact that these three are like the youngest members of the clan, or what's left of the clan, and so that is most of the reason why they are the way they are because they just are going out into the city and just exploring. And I do love that. It gives a little more of a, what's it called? A more humanized look at them. And it makes them feel more human than their appearance is. Then we also got Hudson, who's voiced by the late Ed Asner. And I love his Scottish accent. I'm not kidding. Ed Asner has been a lot of things, particularly in the DC animated universe as Granny Goodness and J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man the Animated Series. But this role, this role is one of my favorites from him because it's just so interesting to watch him go through a lot of these lines and a lot of these moments, kind of thing. Then we also got Bronx, who's voiced by Frank Welker, which that alone is just so funny to just imagining Frank Welker in a recording booth doing this, though it's not that hard to imagine because he does a lot of animal voices. So it is just so much fun to just see him do any kind of work in that regard. But then in halfway through season two, Goliath and the Gargoyle's human friend Elisa, they go on a trip to the magical place of Avalon, and that starts what I like to call the Avalon saga, which should have been a season in and of itself. Is just about the right length for a full season of the show. Because it takes them like 21 episodes to go to Avalon and then try to get back home to Manhattan. And it's just like crazy adventure after crazy adventure for it. But the bigger thing is, during that time, we get to meet a new gargoyle named Angela. And I love her relationship with Goliath, especially during that time, because again, this goes back to with what I liked about Goliath. He's very traditional. He's very stubborn about his beliefs. But it's pretty clear, even in the first episode, that Angela is the daughter of Goliath and another gargoyle that exists in the present day, but is a villain, Demona. And one of my favorite things about it is that she wants Goliath to treat her like a daughter, whereas, and again, one of the bigger things on this adventure, they go all over the place. And at one point, they run across Elisa's mother, who scolds Elisa and in some way, and basically is the very protective mother. And what I love about it is that uh, Angela basically says to Elisa, "Wait, so your mother talks to you like that? I wish I had someone who talked to me like that." And it's just like, oh my gosh. At that point, I was just like, Goliath, just treat her like your daughter. And yeah, eventually he does, and it's very fun and very interesting. And season two is the longest season in the show. I think it was 52 episodes in that season alone. The biggest thing about it is that there was just a lot of story that was going on for it, and I loved every second of it. The fight scenes, they may have needed a little bit of work in terms of with how choreography would work, but hey, you're dealing with humans, which is already pretty hard to animate, versus beasts that are twice as large with giant wings, weird shaped feet, and tails. How is it not going to be awkward to animate? But yeah, one of the biggest things that though about this show was that its third season, which is titled The Goliath Chronicles, um, that season really went down in quality, kind of thing. And there is just a lot that goes on in that season already, and the lower quality and the lower video quality and animation quality really hurts the show. The biggest reason is because there is a lot that happens in that part of the show, and the big villains of that are called the Quarrymen, which honestly is one of the dumbest names I've ever heard of. But they basically want to wait until sunrise and try to kill the gargoyles, kind of thing. And it's a very obvious callback to with the 60s kind of thing. With I'm probably not the best person to talk about this kind of thing with me being a white man. But it is a clear reference of the 60s and I think the 50s as well, where it was very much a like a white supremacy kind of thing, kind of mentality that went on through a lot of America at that time. And I will admit it is very interesting to watch that kind of story unfold in this show, but with the way that the Quarrymen are and how they dress, you literally cannot talk about them without getting like in trouble on YouTube kind of thing. So it is very hard for me to do so, but the best I can describe it is at times I have gotten a little like tug at the collar kind of mentality when watching season three. But one of the biggest things about season three was that there was still the gargoyles trying to help people and doing what they can to make sure that the city is protected from all sorts of evil. And I really loved that about the show. It really showed that even though you're an outcast, you can really do you can really do a lot to help the people become better versions of themselves. And while season three had a bit of a very rushed ending kind of thing, and the fact that I found out that season three was ultimately canceled due to like low ratings and constant news bombardment from the O.J. Simpson trials, this show really could have had a lot of extra stories that we just never got to see. And I'll admit I'm a little upset about that because there are so many stories that would be very interesting. How does the rest of the world feel about gargoyles kind of thing? How will the clan become a new series of protectors for Manhattan? How will things go between gargoyle and human relations? Will there be like future generations of gargoyles, and would they be able to connect well with humanity? Those are questions that we never really get an answer to, kind of thing. However, there are still comics that happen to come out later for the series, kind of thing. I've never read any of these comics, so I don't know any of their stories, but there are comics out for that are, I guess, somewhat tied into the Gargoyles canon. So it's very interesting to know, like research about that and know what the stories are, kind of thing. But yeah, it's very sad that we never got to see much more from that show because I will be honest, that has been one of my favorite shows. And with Disney giving X-Men 97 and what else was there? I'm pretty sure there was like the new DuckTales stuff and King of the Hill and all these oh yeah, Phineas and Ferb. All these reboot, revamp sequels that have been coming out, we definitely need a Gargoyles resurgence. I mean, it's become a bit of a cult classic, and it is, it is so engaging, so interesting, so much fun to watch. I literally just finished watching the series today, and I really just want to go back to watch a lot of these episodes again. It is so much fun to watch. And so, yeah, that's about it for today, kind of thing. And don't worry, guys, I will make one of these kinds of videos for the Daredevil series and for all the Netflix Marvel shows, as they are on Disney Plus as well. But yeah, but yeah, talking about the big three in the dark cartoon era, um, Batman was amazing because it gives us a superhero show that is very mature, dark, has a lot of different types of stories. Some of them don't work, but the majority of them do. At least 90% of them really work and give us some amazing moments. X-Men was very focused on like the racism kind of quality and acceptance and working towards a better future. And it really, really sticks with you, kind of thing, with a lot of these stories. And especially for me, Morph's story is my personal favorite, and that sticks with me every time. And Gargoyles also focused on a bit of a racism kind of quality, and but it is a combination of superhero, science fiction, and mythology. And it gives us a bit of a more broad kind of term for it. Like, again, with gargoyles, there's like humans, gargoyles, and then Oberon's children, which are essentially fairies, all the supernatural elements in the show. So like fairies, banshees, and like all the mythological creatures kind of thing. And it's all of these every story in these three shows has something unique about them, and they feel very different yet very alike. And I love every moment of these shows. They are my personal favorite cartoons that have come out of the 90s. And even though I didn't personally grow up with them, I am quite jealous of the people who did because I really would have wanted to see these cartoons on as a kid. So, with all that out of the way, that was my long, long rant about the my reactions to the three big cartoons of the 90s, as I like to call them. So, take care of yourselves, guys, and I'll see you next time.